Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the IAIB Spotlight. I'm Andrew Zarian, and this week we are joined by, second time actually he's been on the show. Someone that I respect unbelievably in this industry. He's been a huge help to the entire internet broadcasting community. If you are around in those Google Hangouts, if you are, you watch a number of shows that are IAIB members that do shows, you might know this name. And our guest is Mike Phillips this week on the show. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing well, Andrew. Thanks for having me back. It's fun to be here.
Also, I should add, a very good friend of mine, Mike Phillips.
Yes.
Yeah, I want to put that disclaimer out because we may get a little inside jokey on the show.
Yes.
Yes. Mike, for people who don't know you, Mike, let's talk about your past a little bit, because we did a whole thing on your history and how you got into radio, but just to kind of sum it up, how did you get into radio? How did you get into audio? How did you get into broadcasting?
I got into the radio business because I was born into it. My father built a radio station in 1961. It went on the air in 1962. My two older brothers really didn't have a lot of interest in the business, but it was something that I took to and loved it. I grew up in it, actually had my own radio show in 1962. As a kid, it was a cute little thing to have this little fat kid doing a radio show. In those days, you could get away with it. I don't know that you get away with it anymore. As I grew up in the business, and when I got out of college, I actually went back and ran the business for about 8 years. Until I moved on to other things. The business changed quite a bit along the way.
Changed
when you think about it.
How did it change?
Well, you won't appreciate this because we're in different generations. But after about the middle 70s, after disco music, disco killed music, and then it got worse from there on out. So I ended up with a radio station that was playing what we called top 40 music that I couldn't listen to. And I decided it was time to get into something else, which is what I chose to do. But if you think about it, being in the radio business, it's very technical. It has consoles, microphones, mixers, tape recorders, turntables, all those sorts of things. I was really fascinated with it. It's something I always enjoyed. My brother and I were very interested in the recording business, and to the point that he even had a recording studio in his home. I have enough equipment here in my home to have a recording studio, even though I don't have the space for it. But what happened was, somewhere along the way, I sort of got disconnected from the audio stuff, except for the studio side of things. I guess I got disconnected from the broadcasting side of things. Then along about 2010, 2011, Amnon Nissan gave me a call because he and Spencer Shoemaker were going to start broadcasting Computers 2K Now from their radio station, using video, which at that time they were using Ustream. They were having audio problems. I went over there to help them solve those problems, which we were able to do pretty quickly. And at that point, that was my reintroduction to broadcasting, because internet broadcasting is the wave of the future.
So I did not know that about you. I didn't know that you were turned off by everything, and all of a sudden, recently, you're talking the last 3 years, you got interested in it again.
I've always been a microphone collector. I've always played around with recording studios, have friends and bands in recording studios. But keep in mind that the broadcast spectrum is an extremely limited commodity. You can't say, wait, heck, I want a radio station or TV station, and go build one. The frequency spectrum allocation, as you hear from Twert and Kirk Harnack, the frequency allocations are very, very coveted. They're very, very expensive to get, and you'll have to fight City Hall to get them. What that meant was I had no access to broadcasting. And I don't mean this as unkindly as it sounds, but here I am in Raleigh, North Carolina. There's nothing at all in the radio business here that interests me in the least. Not the music stations, the talk stations are all satellite repeaters. There's nothing here that gets my attention. So yes, I completely disconnected from the radio business over a number of years. To see this bandwidth, and this is what we've talked about with regard to the CDNs, the mixlers, and depending on whether you're doing audio video, The bandwidth is now available through the internet. It was not available in the early 2000s, in the middle 90s, like it is today because of bandwidth.
Was it the flexibility of broadcasting on the internet where you didn't have all these restrictions and it was still so great? 2000, even now, it's still grassroots and everybody's scrapping things together and they're coming up with bizarre ways to do stuff and get it to work. Is that what caught your interest, or was it just, wow, I could actually do a professional radio show, what we're used to hearing on regular radio, on the internet?
Both. I mean, I'm interested. You got to be sort of a little weird to be interested in solving technical problems, but if I had my way about it, I'd probably be a troubleshooter for my livelihood. I enjoy troubleshooting. I used to repair electronic circuitry. I used to rebuild reel-to-reel tape recorders. At one point, I was actually the technical service facility for Broadcast Electronics for their cart machines and other equipment. So I love troubleshooting things, and I do have a background in electronics. When these challenges came along, it excited me. It was bizarre because what the only real problem that Amnon and Spencer were having with their broadcast back in we were trying to figure out whether it was 2010 or 2011. The only real problem they were having was a ground loop, and that is they had some grounds in the studio that were, I guess they could have actually been miswired at some point at the mains, because whenever they would interconnect the equipment, it would totally kill the audio. I mean, it would just even sometimes reboot the computer. It was so bad. But having dealt with those things for many, many years, I grabbed a ground loop isolator, went over there, slapped it in, boom, we're off to the races. So I would say it was both. The fact that bandwidth is available, but I mean, at your age, you're not going to understand that back when I was your age and younger.
Oh, here we go, Mike.
You don't want to hear it?
I want to hear it.
No, you don't.
Of course I do.
You don't want to hear it.
Of course I do.
We would wait until the sun went down to be able to listen to out-of-town radio stations at night. WLS,
but I mean, it's still like
Chicago.
That. You could still do that with AM stations. I mean, there's some depending on where you are and where you're located, in the middle of the night, if you turn it on, you could pick up an AM station from, God knows where.
And hear what? A syndicated radio program on satellite that's also available on the internet.
Absolutely.
And I mean, no big deal. It's just there's just nothing there to get my excitement, and that troubles me because I grew up in the business and I dearly loved it. I never liked anything any better in my life as a career than I enjoyed being in the radio business. I make no secret about that. That excitement was gone. I had given up on it. I'd said, okay, it's toast. And then the internet broadcasting thing came along. My first real exposure, I guess, would be to podcasting, because there were people at that time when I was not really a big podcast listener who would record and do RSS feeds and have automatic downloads, and the iPod thing was there, and podcast was iPods, whatever. All that being said, very few podcasters that I am aware of were actually simulcasting their recording session, which really would be considered internet broadcasting. There's always this long discussion about what is internet broadcasting, what is podcasting. They overlap in some spaces, but they really are very different. Podcasting doesn't really do much for me in terms of a sole means of distributing the content. It has value. I mean, a lot of people are watching this show through a podcast, and we're glad that they are. But the part that excites me, having been in the radio business, is to be able to sit here doing a live broadcast, even watching the chat room, getting feedback. Spencer Coburn, radio is in a bad place. 25 years ago, how would I have gotten that message and to get his opinion?
Impossible.
There's nothing like the feeling of live. Even the addition of the chat room to the live broadcast stream is an extraordinary improvement over radio of days gone by.
When I got started in internet broadcasting, I only did maybe 2 or 3 podcasts, and then I went live, and then I was kind of bored with just sitting there and recording a show by myself and with another person in a room. But the fact that this is happening at the moment, I mean, people could tune in and listen to it, and there's no editing. It's totally unfiltered. You could do whatever you're doing at that moment is going out there. It's exciting. I mean, I still get butterflies every time I'm about to go live. I don't get it when I have to do a pre-recorded thing. I've done a lot of pre-recorded stuff. I've done reviews. I mean, to me, it's a chore. When I go live, I love it.
And I have to tell you, I still get butterflies too. And I have been on, what's the saying, that you're not an expert in anything until you've done it for 10,000 hours? Well, by that definition, I'm an expert in being on the air, because having grown up in the business and having had to work in the family business many, many, many years, I've been on the air more than 10,000 hours. You wouldn't know it by listening to me, because that's just the way the cookie crumbles. But it still is an exciting thing to go live. You're exposing your soul to the world out there. If it's recorded, you can fix it and keep yourself from looking stupid by editing things. But that's also interesting that you bring that up about the butterflies, because we do support podcasters in the internet broadcasting community as well, because there is an overlap, and a lot of the broadcasters do the podcasting. But there is a number of podcasters who say they are scared to go live. The only reason they will do their show is because they are afraid to actually stream while they are recording live. And I get that.
But why are they scared? Why?
You're putting it all out there. I mean, if I say something really stupid, which I'll do 2 or 3 times during this broadcast, it's out there. I mean, it's got my name all around it. What are you going to do? I happen not to care. I mean, we're not going to get into anything here that hopefully will embarrass myself too much. But the bottom line is that it's for years been called red light fever. And what that really was is a recording studio expression that you could take a band into a recording studio in those days to make a record. In these days, then it was CD, now it's who knows what they call it. But what would happen invariably is that when the studio is ready to record, they flip this switch and there's a red light that says recording. And it never failed that the band comes into the studio, they do great, they warm up, they're ready to go, they turn on the red light, and then everything goes to crap.
Yeah.
They get red light fever because they're scared that everything they're going to do is being captured potentially in perpetuity, right?
See,
so it's red light fever.
With me, it's the total opposite. It's when, recently we did for GFQ, we did an unboxing of the Chromecast. It literally took me 2 hours to make a 3-minute video, 5-minute video, because I'm thinking over and over again about what I'm going to say, and it just doesn't come out. When I'm live, I don't have that pressure on me. You know what? If I have an here, I have an there. If I stumble on my words, it's natural. Oh, well, I'll learn from it, and I won't do it next time. For me, live is what does it.
And when you go back and listen to it, you say, why did I say that? Or, boy, that really makes me look stupid. But you know what? You're your own worst critic. If people don't like what you're saying, let them turn it off. They're not going to sit there, and most people aren't going to sit there and poke holes in what you're saying and doing. So what the heck?
Mike, I want to talk to you about video, and if you feel that video at this point, when it comes to internet broadcasting and podcasting, is it a important thing to be doing? Is it necessary to do? Because now, if you look at it, everybody's doing video, and I've been a huge advocate of doing a live video show. Be a talking head, nothing fancy, just have a camera there, a microphone. It adds something. And for people that watch a show, I never look at the camera because I like the voyeuristic feel of it. I think that's natural. You're watching me do a show. But do you feel that video is important? What kind of presentation with video should you have? Is this the format to be doing this with, a microphone and gigantic headphones, or it should be something else?
It depends on what your objectives are. I do think video is important, and I am an audio guy. You want to talk to me about Wirecast? You want to talk to me about TriCasters or VidBlasters? I can't help you. Don't know those things. But if you want to talk about audio, I do know those things. And it's interesting, again, that you bring the question up, because I was thinking about some of the topics for today, and one of the first things that popped into my mind is that as it relates to some of these video broadcasters, that I try to work with them and get their audio up to par. Since I was on here last time, there are several of them that I don't think have improved very much. And I don't know if that means that they can't hear it, they don't believe what I'm saying is not correct, maybe I don't understand their setup. there's a lot of room for improvement in audio. The video, it's people can look at the video and say, wow, that looks great. Look how clear it is. I can read the print on that box sitting on the table behind you. Video, people get it. People can get extraordinarily good-looking video, even if they don't have a really good, strong background in video production. But for audio, somehow, they just seem to miss it. And I don't mind working with people. I'm glad to help any way I can. They're going to have to do their homework. They're going to have to listen. I mean, there are people who, for example, you say, okay, you need to do this. All right, I did it. Yep, did this, and this. They haven't done it. They either don't get it or they think they know better. Then they should do it their way.
I think most people think that they know better. I mean, I've dealt with that as well, where people have asked me for my help. I've told them how to do it. I've told them what to buy, and they've gone and bought the total opposite. The thing that I told them not to buy, they've bought, and they've done exactly what I told them not to do because they think they know better, and to them, for whatever reason, that's what they're going to do. I want to talk to you now about, what people could do to improve their setup. What are some mistakes people make, up-and-coming podcasters and people even now that may be listening to this and, they're experiencing some issues and they want to improve their audio. Let's talk about, whatever the amount is, whatever time we have, but I want to talk to you about what are some problems and what are some mistakes people make when it comes to podcasting in this kind of environment. None of us are recording in a $5,000 studio where we have, soundproofed everything and top-end mics or whatever. We're broadcasting from our living rooms pretty much. What are some mistakes you think, Mike, from the time that you've been listening to all these shows to now, that you think people make?
Where to start? For starters, I don't know how to train your ears to be able to hear differences in audio. I don't know how you do that. I've kind of
come up with a way to do it, Mike.
I don't know what that is. If you said to me, I'm going to take up golf, I would tell you to go take lessons. So videotape yourself, swinging the club, watching every movement to find out how you can improve it. Find out if you're actually bending your elbow, and I'm not a golfer, so I don't know what I'm talking about. Don't attack me. I don't know how you train yourself to listen to audio. We were talking with Stephen earlier today when we were talking about an audio issue that occurred long time ago. And I made a comment that the audio was clipped. Somebody else in the chat room said, sounds great to me. I don't know how to train these people to hear things that are clipped. My ears, I'm getting old. My ears are not what they used to be. I don't have golden ears. I listen to things in what's considered the power band where most people hear, and that is I can hear clipping in the mid-band. My hearing probably doesn't go above 12K anymore. That's irrelevant when it comes to broadcasting. It's not there. But what do they do? The first thing is somehow you've got to learn how to listen, what to listen for. Now, as I'm talking, I'm thinking maybe you could go on the internet and listen to audio that's clipped, listen to what it sounds like, listen to what ear fatigue is all about. There's a podcasting, podcasting guy, Uncle Boom and Sizzle, who cranks up the bass and the treble on all of his audio because, wow, that sounds great. It sounds like
radio,
rap CDs, or it sounds like radio. When in fact, whenever you accentuate the highs and the lows in your audio, you create what is called a fatiguing sound, and that is people listen to it, and after a while, their ears feel like they're being pressured or something because it really fatigues your eardrum trying to listen to that noise. I think that's a serious mistake that a lot of people make. Amnon will tell you that when we do Computers 2K Now on Sunday mornings, sometimes he has to, because of variations in Skype connections, he may have to tweak the treble control on his mixer to get things to sound right when he has a person maybe who doesn't have a really good microphone on the other end on one of his other shows. He may forget to reset it to 12 o'clock. I can actually hear it if it's not set at 12 o'clock. I'll send him a private chat, or all of your tone controls set at 12 o'clock. He'll look over, nope, I had left the treble control at 2 o'clock and put it back now. Now things sound normal. That being said, I think to sum it up, the issue is that people tend to crank all of these tone controls, and they've got to get gates, limiters, processors, clippers. let me tell you, if you're just starting out, don't do all that stuff. Just start out with everything at 12 o'clock. Learn to manage your levels. Will they be less than perfect from time to time? Yes. But let me say it this way. Maybe this will persuade you to do that. If you learn how to manage your levels, if you learn how to make sure things stay at the right operating level, whenever you get the processing equipment, such as the very professional stuff that you have, Andrew, whenever you feed this equipment with the proper levels, the equipment works a lot better than it does when you send it a bunch of junk.
Absolutely.
Learn to control your levels.
And we're still tweaking. I mean, we have all this equipment here, and all the time, we'll tweak this, we'll tweak that, we'll add a little high, we'll add a little low until we find something that kind of works for us. I feel that the reason why I'll listen to like a lot of podcasts, and there are issues, and I'll hear the issue, and I feel like there's two reasons why. One, I think a lot of people are not using decent headphones to evaluate what's happening during their broadcast. A lot of people are using iPod, just iPod headphones, the cheap little ones that come with them, and you're not going to be able to kind of determine where the ranges of your sound. Everything is going to sound kind of the same because it's a cheap little headphone. It's like $1 headphone, $2 headphone. The other issue that I have noticed is that we, as internet broadcasters, and being, it's a very techie community, we like to tinker with stuff, and we're swapping headphones out, we're swapping mics out, we're changing this, we're changing that. Leave it alone, like Mike said. I think if you get yourself a decent pair of headphones, I mean, I've had these for 4 years now, and I don't want to change them. And I'm losing one channel in this one, but I'm afraid to change it because my ears are so used to this sound, and I could determine where a pop is coming from, where a crackle is coming from, where there's a hiss. I know the headphones. My ears are used to it. If I swap these out, I have a pair of Sony MDRs. I have a problem determining what range the audio is at.
But that's a good point because the MDRs are good. By the way, the 7506s are the most popular.
No, they're very good. They're very good.
But listen to this. The 7506s are the most popular ones. The 7502s, in my opinion, sound better and they're half the price. But that's an aside. The point with the headphones being that if you were to work with the MDRs for a month, you would be used to those and you would have the same complaint with the headphones you have now.
You're absolutely right.
But this business of tweaking, if you can't tweak and play around with it, it takes the fun out of it. But that doesn't mean you should tinker with the givens or the universal truths that we need to follow in audio, and that is no clipping, good signal to noise ratio. Other things you can play with, but there are some fundamentals that you need to follow, and those are the ones that I really advocate for pros and amateurs alike.
The other issue that I have found is that people don't have their stuff leveled, and by leveled I mean they have the mixer set to something, then they have their headphone amp set to something else, then they have the output of the mixer to the headphone amp set to something else, so they can't properly evaluate what's going out to the live audience or to the podcast. Mike, give us some tips on how to level everything, because we even still to this day we still have issues with the headphone amp where I feel like it's not a true representation of what's going in my console.
It's actually a great point, and it has to do with learning how to operate your equipment. I will tell you, you may not like it, but read the manual. Read the manual. I have a Presonus 16.4.2 mixer. If you want to get a challenge in audio, you grab one of those and try to learn how to use it to its maximum potential. It's an amazing piece of equipment. I know Vance Willis has not been really happy with his. He's had issues with his. Knock on wood, mine has worked perfectly. I've been very pleased with it, but it's a $2,000 mixer. But now, how do you level it out? What I try to teach is the way we used to do it in the radio business. In the radio business, our mixers are called consoles. What you have is a radio console. What the Behringers, the Mackeys, those are called mixers. And the way we used to do it back in the radio business, which worked really well, is that in our console, what we would do is, at maintenance time, is we would feed a constant tone into the console and set the level on the VU meter at minus 10 dB. That's just an arbitrary level. The meter just hangs there because it's a constant tone. We then would go to the reel-to-reel machine, set the input record level to minus 10. Go to the cart machine, set the input level to -10. If we had a cassette deck in there, we would go in there, set the level to -10. Now, the reason we do that is the same reason we should be doing that in internet broadcasting. And that is that once the other equipment is calibrated, all you have to watch is the VU meter on the broadcast console. If you're hitting red on the console, you're going to be hitting red on every other piece of equipment attached to it. The direct answer to your question is, on your mixer, let's say on this PreSonus mixer, how should I set it up? First thing you do is read the manual, because it has some steps on how to get the optimum signal to noise ratio after you get the mixer set up. For one thing is that you always start with getting your level correct on the mixer. I don't know how many times people have contacted me and said, well, this is not working, I can't get this level right. When I crank this up, I end up splattering over here. And I said, you have not calibrated things here. What you have to do is you have to get, on this particular mixer, you want to hit 0 dB. You want to tickle it. You don't want to stay on top of it. You want to hit 0 dB or 0 on the meter, not digital full scale. Digital full scale, beyond which it is distortion in clipping. You want to get the meter settings correct on your mixer. Once that is correct, then you set your level on Skype, then you set your level on Wirecast, or going into the TriCaster, you set the levels there. You calibrate them to the levels on the mixer. Once you have done that, all you have to do is watch your level on the mixer. Everything else is going to be right. You don't have to sit there looking around. You don't have to sit there guessing whether you're splattering or too low on your other equipment. Now, once all that is set, the headphone level is absolutely independent of everything else. The headphone level is your personal preference. That's how you calibrate it.
No, I agree with you 100%. That's the way to do it. But I think a lot of people, if it's a little too loud, they'll drop the headphones. That's an easy fix. They just drop the headphones. So like, now it's not loud. I'm not as distorted now.
If it's, well, but here's the point. If you hear distortion and you reduce the headphone level, that's not going to reduce the distortion unless you're distorting your headphones. If distortion is coming through the mixer, changing the headphone level is not going to have any effect on distortion.
No. Well, let me explain. I think that what a lot of people do is that they lower the headphones to the point that they're barely hearing what's coming out from the headphones. They're hearing themselves talk.
It's a critical balance. Yeah. You have to learn what you're doing. You have to get used to it. You have to know your system like you do, so that you can hear these problems. I also think a lot of people do not monitor their own audio. Many times, lots of times, you can be doing a broadcast and somebody in chat says, "Hey, Andrew, you got a buzz." I mean, an audio buzz, and you may not be able to hear it because the noise may be getting into the system after it leaves your headphones. The point in the audio chain at which your headphones are picking up the audio. I have actually been guest on shows before, and I'm supposed to be this audio guy and so forth. I've had shows where I've gone on to other shows and had a ground loop, which is a buzz or a noise getting into my audio that the host could hear that I could not hear. If there is a noise getting into this audio after it leaves my microphone, I can't hear it because I can't monitor the stream. That's a disadvantage that internet broadcasters have and that you have to work around. That's why I say to people when I go into chat rooms, sometimes I'll comment on audio. It stuns me how many people take offense at it and want to argue because I'm just trying to give them a hand. I think one of the mistakes that people make is not being open to criticism and listening to people who are simply trying to help. I do audio consulting for people, and I don't charge anything. I do it trying to help, trying to make things better. If you want to check it out, fine. If you want me to help, I'll try to on a time available basis. So a mistake is not listening to criticism. What is the biggest mistake of all that I think people make? Spending too much money.
Okay. Explain.
Spending too much money. You are a professional internet broadcaster. You do it for a living. What you spend on it is justified. I mean, what is Tom Likas reportedly has a radio-only studio where he spent $1 million. Is that crazy? It is in my book, but if it works for him, it's his money. He can do whatever he chooses. How much money does it take to get good quality audio? Well, I've seen people say you have to go out and buy a Heil PR40 for $325, put it in a $100 shock mount, $400. You have to have a PreSonus mixer, that's $2,000. Do you have to do all that? Well, do you have to have gate compressors, limiters? Do you have to have equalizers? I would argue that the answer to that question is no. How does my audio sound to you right now, Andrew?
That sounds great.
Would you consider it broadcast quality?
Sure, yeah.
Don't get too enthusiastic about it.
No, I would.
All right. Would you believe me if I told you that I'm doing it for $35?
Ah, look at that, and you had the PR40 in front of you.
I mean, I'm talking to you. Sorry, Joe. Talking to you on an Audio-Technica ATR 2100.
$35.
Total cost $35. Going into the computer via USB. Take it anywhere in the world. And is this as good as the PR40? I don't know. Is it good enough? Yeah. I think it does a great job. So you can get by using an ATR 2100 if you don't have the money to do the more expensive system. Now, I'm going to switch over to the Heil PR40, and I will warn you right now that sometimes Skype doesn't make this change very well. So if it doesn't work, then we'll do a plan B. But I'm going to switch over to that right now.
Nope, no audio. As Mike is trying to bring the audio back. Nope, nothing. So he knew. He knew that Skype wasn't going to do it. Are you switching back, or I'm
trying. All right, well,
You're
actually, this is a good point. How do I sound now?
Oh, atrocious, awful.
Wow, how can that be? I'm using the microphone built into my webcam.
Well, I don't know. There might be something wrong with that built-in microphone because they all sound amazing.
Yeah, well, the bottom line being is that if you're doing your podcast or your show using a built-in microphone on your webcam, you probably ought to get a new hobby.
Do you need me to reconnect so you could bring back your audio?
I don't think so. How do we sound now?
I don't know what you're on. Tap on the mic. No. Are you on that?
Yeah, PR40.
You sound awful. No, can't be.
What do you mean I sound awful?
It sounds awful.
How can it sound awful?
Sounds like you're in a bathroom.
Well, maybe something's not working. So this is why you have to be careful.
All right, I'm back. Am I back on this one?
Yeah.
All right, we'll stick with this.
Yeah.
But the point being, and I did that on the air live and on purpose because it shows that the tools here, Skype should be able to seamlessly switch between these audio sources. It cannot, and if you start tinkering with things during a live broadcast, then you get whatever goes with it. We intentionally do things like that because this is a show about internet broadcasting. Sometimes you need to learn how to fix the warts. Now, why does this not switch to another audio? I don't know. It's not important.
So you brought up the Heil PR40, $300 mic. You're using a $31 microphone right now. I kind of wish that ATR was out when I started because it would have saved me a lot of money and a lot of headache when I started out. And I think a lot of people too. But at what point do you say, you know what, maybe I should get a PR40? Like right now, I'm using a Neumann TLM 103. This is not necessary at all.
Right.
And I got an email the other day. They were asking me, well, do you recommend me getting that mic? And I said, no, I don't. I don't recommend you getting the mic. It's not necessary. You know what? It's a condenser microphone, so depending on what environment you're in, it may sound awful. That $35 microphone may sound 10 times better than what you're going to be able to do with the Neumann, depending on your environment.
And that is, of course, that condenser microphones have to be used in environments that are acoustically treated, and most home studios are not. They do not. My studio here is not acoustically treated. I can go get a few condenser microphones and demonstrate them, and you may or may not hear the difference. But bottom line is that if you want to go with a fail-safe, go with a dynamic microphone. The ATR 2100, the AT2005 is a dynamic microphone, as is the PR40. I think they sound great. I think they do a good job, and they don't pick up all the background noise like the computer fans and things like that. Having said that, even with a dynamic microphone, Andrew and I are both big advocates of a piece of equipment that's not too expensive, that if you're using a mixer, is a really good thing to get, and that is the DBX286S microphone processor. Don't recommend that you use the gates and equalizers on it because it makes you sound boom and sizzle. But the gate on this thing, and what the gate is that when you stop talking, this piece of equipment, in essence, turns off your microphone. It turns it off in between sentences, not between words, but in between sentences. If you don't have a good gate, if some of the cheaper garbage equipment out there,
Samson, Behringer,
I didn't call any names,
I'll
but
say it.
whenever you listen to those, you can hear this thump in there when it turns on and turns off. The gate in the DBX286S was actually designed by Bob Orban, who is an audio genius. He's the guy who designed the Optimods. He's the Orban. He is Bob Orban of Orban fame. Broadcasters, every broadcaster knows who he is. And it's an extraordinarily well done piece of equipment. It has a microphone preamp built into it. So you actually bring it into your mixer or console on the line input channel, but that's fine. That's no big deal. That's just the way it works. We're a big fan of that piece of equipment.
Oh, it's
Do you
phenomenal.
have to have it? No, you don't have to have it, but it's useful.
If you are doing a podcast every week and you're committed to it and you've been doing it for a couple of years, I think a $200 investment for that piece of equipment will go a long way.
I would rather you spend $35 on an ATR 2100 if you're going to use it XLR. If you're going to use it USB, then you can't do anything with it, really. But if you're going to use it as an XLR microphone into a mixer, I would recommend, quite candidly, that you get the DBX286S before you spend that $200 getting a Heil PR40, an RE20, an SM7, a Beyerdynamic M99, some of the more expensive dynamic microphones. If you want a condenser microphone, go for it. I mean, I tested not too long ago. I may be doing a review on it. I actually did a test on an Audio-Technica AT2020 USB version of their condenser microphone. And I have to tell you, in doing some blind testing with people, that it works really well. It has a really good sound to it. It does not seem to be overly sensitive like so many of the condenser microphones. For those people who think they have to have a condenser microphone, I think I might be able to recommend that one. But for the most part, no. Stick with dynamic.
If we kind of let's break away from the entry level ATR 2100. You're a huge advocate of it. So am I, and a lot of people are. You've got a ton of people to buy it. What microphone other than that would you recommend? Let's go up in price a little bit. Let's go up. Whatever you want to go to, $1,000. Under $1,000. What would you recommend people get? Is it the PR40 as the PR40 has become the go-to for internet broadcasting, but would you recommend an RE20? Would you recommend an SM7?
My general advice is, because so many people like the PR40, because it's being used by so many on internet broadcasters of fame of sorts, my general recommendation is either spend $35 and get the ATR 2100 or spend $300 or whatever you can get a Heil PR44. I was using Heil PR40s before that famous broadcaster started using one. I had never even heard of him whenever I had mine. I thought it was unusual to see him using it after when I first became aware of his program. Having said that, I don't think there's a lot of difference between an RE20 and the PR40. There's a little bit more boom and sizzle on the PR40. A lot of people seem to like that. I don't find it objectionable for most people. So my recommendation generally is either get the ATR 2100 or the PR40. Having said that, Spencer Coburn uses the RE20. It's a great microphone. It's the most ubiquitous microphone in the broadcasting industry. They are everywhere. It is the standard in the broadcasting industry. There are a lot of people with whom I have contact in the broadcasting industry who have compared the PR40 with the RE20, and they don't like the PR40. They don't like the difference in the sound. It's what they're accustomed to, just like you're accustomed to those headphones. As far as I'm concerned, anybody spending $1,000 or more on a microphone is insane for broadcasting.
I'm crazy.
I said
You told me not to buy this.
I did.
But you also did say when I got this mic, you said when I got it and I hooked it up, you go, "Wow, I'm actually a little surprised." And I said, "Why?" He goes, "It's not picking up as much room noise as I thought it would."
But the caveat that I told you was that you had to test it in your room, because the ability of that microphone to do a good job for you is conditioned upon how things are in your room. If you happen to have that microphone in a highly reflective position, and there's some really good videos on YouTube about how to determine where the sound reflections are in your particular room or studio. If you happen to be in a particularly reflective spot, you would have sent that thing back in a moment.
Oh, I'm sure.
But it turns out that your layout is good, the acoustics in there are reasonable, and you know how to work a microphone. It works for you.
I've used the PR40, and this kind of goes into a whole different topic. Mike is recommending these microphones, but like he said, you have to use the microphone before you purchase it, because depending on your voice, it may sound awful. I don't sound good on an RE20. I think I sound awful on an RE20. The same goes for a PR40. I don't think I sound good on a PR40. I actually like the way I sound on an SM7. You don't like the SM7.
There's nothing wrong with the SM7. I just think it's overpriced. I love the way it looks. I think it's a great looking microphone. The price is high. I just don't think it provides the value. There are some people who know a lot about microphones who suggest that the insides of an SM7 are really nothing more than a Shure SM57, which is a $99 microphone in a nice case. I don't like an SM57 for voice. It's great for recording guitar amps and recording studios, but it's what I would refer to in many cases as a public address type microphone. Whenever the president speaks, it's almost always into an array of 3 Shure SM57s with windscreens on them, and this is what they use. I just don't like it. It's not a bad microphone. I had 2 of them. I sold them to get rid of them. I just don't like it.
Now, we spoke about dynamic mics. We spoke about condenser. What about ribbon mics? Tell me a little bit about that.
I lost your audio again.
Really?
There, it's back.
Oh.
Love Skype.
Before I cut out, I wanted you to go into ribbon mics and talk about that a little bit.
Ribbon microphones are for recording studios and recording studios only. They are designed to, I don't want to get overly technical here for 2 reasons. 1, nobody would care, and 2, I'm not sure I wouldn't embarrass myself. But a ribbon microphone does not have the same response that a dynamic or condenser microphone has. It is optimum for recording instruments like violins that have a lot of really high frequencies and squeaks in them, because it tends to suppress some of that high frequency content that kind of grates on you. If you were to take, for example, to record a violin with a condenser microphone, then put the ribbon microphone on it, you probably would prefer listening to the ribbon microphone. I'm not aware of anyone other than Glenn Beck who uses a ribbon microphone for a primary microphone. Back in the old days, the TV days, whenever you saw the Larry King, the Johnny Carson shows where they had these pill-type microphones sitting on their desks, those were RCA 77DX ribbon microphones. That's what they had for the day. They worked fine. But for voice overs, for voice broadcasting, I just don't think there's any market for ribbon microphones.
Because a lot of people have been bringing that up lately. They're nice looking mics, some of them. I mean, they're
look
beautiful.
nice. They're neat looking deals. Look up RCA 77DX, and you will find a microphone that you've seen 10,000 times. Even you kids have seen the 77DX. You can look up the RCA 44BX, and you will have seen these many, many times. They're collector's items. I've had both of them, sold them, and made a profit on them when I sold them. I like having them, but they just don't have a place, in my opinion, in internet broadcasting.
Well said. Let's talk about the future of internet broadcasting. There was a topic on the forum, and the topic was are celebrities hurting internet broadcasting? Are they hurting the podcaster? You know, the everyday podcaster, the non-celebrity podcaster. You know, the Adam Carollas, all these, you know, celebrities are coming over and they're starting to do a podcast. What does that do for the industry, and what can everyday podcasters do to kind of stand out, in your opinion?
You had to bring this up. You're going to make me look bad here. I'm not really optimistic in that regard. I think internet broadcasting is here to stay. It is bandwidth. From a purely technical perspective, it is how we get sound from point A to point B. We used to have to do that over the radio, over the broadcasting airwaves, which only a few people have access to. Now it's the internet. It's unlimited. We're both part of groups that have a lot of podcasters in them, and you will always people will come in and say, wow, I've just released my 3rd episode and I still can't make a living doing this.
Yeah.
What's wrong? What have I done wrong? There are people who've released hundreds of episodes who still may only have 1,000 or 500 downloads. I mean, it takes a long time to build a following. There are a lot of amateur podcasters out there, and before people think I'm being overly critical, you've got to start somewhere. It's a good place to learn how to do it, but the bottom line is that if you're only doing one podcast a week, I don't know how quickly you're going to reach the same performance level as the quote-unquote professional announcers, broadcasters.
I think some people have a natural talent and they're naturally really good at it, so they can. But in my opinion, I think it's very difficult. It's a total package deal. You could have phenomenal content, you could have a phenomenal presence, but if you don't have the total package, it's going to be very difficult for you to go out there and go to an advertiser or go to a viewer pretty much and get them to stay. That's the most difficult thing, is getting people to stay and to watch you. I think it's easy to get someone to come once and watch you.
But getting back to your question, I personally, I've thought about it. I have no crystal ball. I may be totally wrong here. But as the internet broadcasting as a medium continues to expand, I do think the quote-unquote professional broadcast, whatever that, I don't know what that is. I mean, is Howard Stern a professional broadcaster? Does he have a degree? Did he have to take a state licensing examination that qualified him to become a professional? No. I don't know where you cross the level between amateur and professional. By credentials, I should be a professional. By performance, I'm an amateur. That being said, as this medium continues to grow and expand, you're going to see more quote-unquote professional broadcasters getting into it. And the part that I think is bad is I think that as these pros get more involved, I think it's going to be really bad for the really bad podcasters and internet broadcasters out there. I mean, you think about, and I've tried to compare it with how often I know Nick does this, how often do you watch your community broadcast channel on your local cable system?
Oh, public access is phenomenal here in New York.
Well, New York is not a good example. We're out here in flyover country, and generally community access consists of people who can't get on the airwaves anywhere else, and because they're taxpayers, they have a right to be on the channel, and they really shouldn't be on that channel.
I've kind of figured out what they do here in New York is that they take a camera into Bellevue Hospital, and it's just a bunch of mentally ill people just screaming. That's what public access is here in New York.
Lost your audio again.
That is weird, huh? That is bizarre. And now it'll be back. You there?
Got you now.
Yeah. Something clicked. I heard it on your end.
Really?
Yeah. It just went dead and then it came back for some reason.
So I guess this is one of the perils of live broadcasting, is that you have to take it the way you get it, right?
Interesting. Well, I mean, that's the whole point of this entire conversation. But back to the public access thing, I was saying how it's just insanity. But there are many broadcasters out there that's how they started. Last week, we had Spencer on the air, and he was talking about pay for play and how he started out in radio as a pay guy. He would pay for the time, and that's how he started out. I think that's a great way to do it. And public access is the same thing. A lot of broadcasters started out in public access. Alex Jones, for example, which is nationally syndicated now. I mean, in like 200 markets. He started out in public access.
I think you have to cut your teeth anywhere you can. Absolutely. And that's why I say I'm not being overly critical about quote unquote amateur podcasters, because you got to start somewhere. If you feel a passion to get into broadcasting, to say what's on your mind, to release this content out there, go for it. I mean, it has to be there. The only thing I would suggest is don't be unrealistic in your expectations. And that is, I've even said to some people, when you're talking to some people, you know they're not going to stick. You know they're going to pod fade eventually. And what I have said to people is, look, do this. If you're not sure this is what you want to do, you're not comfortable talking into the microphone, you're not comfortable on camera, why don't you sit down and do write down, get a pad of paper, and make a list of what you're going to do in your first 10 shows. Then go ahead, and unless you have a guest, which it makes it a little tougher to do, go ahead and produce those first 10 shows before you even release the first one. Why do I recommend that? Number one, most people pod fade before they get to the 10th episode. If you don't have enough enthusiasm, material, expertise to get to the 10th podcast, why bother with it? Just go play golf or something. Number two, is that it helps you hone your skills. And that is, when you get to the 10th episode, you're going to be a lot better at it than you are when you did the first episode.
Absolutely.
You may decide not to release the first episode. What is the old saying? You only have one opportunity to make a good first impression. Maybe by the time you get to the 10th episode, you want to go back and change that first impression. Now, I will tell you that of all the time I've said that, I'm not aware of anyone who's taken that advice. A couple of people have kind of responded, yeah, I get what you mean. I think I'm going to do that. But really, I think it's the mindset as much as it is the actual practice of doing 10 episodes before you release one. And by golly, some people just need to be doing other things. They really don't need to be doing a podcast.
My biggest problem with a lot of the stuff
audio again.
That is weird. It's you know what? It's ducking.
I don't know what's happening, but you're back now.
Yeah, I think it's ducking. That is weird.
It's got to be your fault.
It might be. Listen, it might be something on Skype. I don't know. Who knows?
Wow.
It could be anything.
So I'm sorry. You were saying.
I think a lot of people have this issue where, and I don't know when this started. It's this, I need to be making money with this. It's no longer a hobby. I think for a lot of people, it's about, well, I could get an advertiser. I could do this. Forget about the advertisers. Build the content, build the quality of the show, build the audience. And you know what? Just going on Twitter and Facebook is not enough to build an audience.
How do people need to build an audience?
There's 1,000 things they could do. I mean, we could dedicate an entire show to it. But for example, I think start a conversation with people. You know, let's say you do a show on model airplanes. Join a model airplane community. Start talking to people. Don't push your podcast. Start talking to people about it. And eventually, you know what? You build a name in that community. You build your reputation, and you post that you do a podcast. I think that's a great way to start getting an audience.
Well, let's assume you're into something like woodworking and you do a woodworking podcast. Have you printed up business cards that you take to your regional meetings to pass out to all your friends who attend these? Do you have the podcast or internet broadcast listed in the signature block of any forums that you join? I mean, there are a lot of ways to do that, and I think you have to do them all. But you've got to have a quality product. If you go on the air with a webcam mic or don't pay attention to your audio, if you don't learn how to set your levels, boy, when they come check you out, they're going to turn it on and immediately turn it back off. Getting them the second time is a lot harder than getting them. Did I say that right? Getting them the second time is a lot harder than getting them the first time if you lose them. If they say, wow, that's terrible, I'm not going back to that, you may never see them again.
No, you're absolutely right. And you probably can't hear me right now, right? Or you can? Oh, there you go. To me, it is vital to keep the audience. And a lot of people get turned off when people start pitching the money thing, and they start, they start asking for the donations. Keep that till the end. Build the audience first.
I was just sitting here and thinking about another big mistake that people have, in my opinion, and this is true for any media, and that's letting their egos get in the way. I never cease to be amazed at some of the egos that I see in the podcasting and internet broadcasting community. You need to have pride in what you do. You need to be proud
Well, you
of
also
it.
have to be humble.
Yeah, and it doesn't cost any extra, but I got to tell you, it can be such a turnoff that, and I realize that there are some guys out there who are scumming up the works, that they are selling people things that they really don't need that are available for free elsewhere, and I get that, but any industry is going to have that. So be smart, but boy, when I see an ego, I bolt. I just go the other way, because I'm very fortunate that I, like you, Andrew, have met some of the biggest names in the industry. And you know what? And for the most part, the bigger the name, the more humble they are, the less apparent the ego is. That's not universally true, but I mean, I've seen them from top to bottom, and when you see the ego getting in the way, that's a really bad problem where I come from.
Oh, no. I mean, listen, you have to be humble, and you have to be able to take criticism in this business. And if someone is telling you, this is not working, that's not working, don't automatically have this defensive reaction to it. Acknowledge what they're saying and think, this is why they're saying that to me. This is why they're not watching. You have to realize that when listen, there are people that are going to come and tell you suck, and that's different. But if someone comes and tells you, like, hey, listen, Mike, you're having an issue with that audio, it keeps cutting out all the time, there are people that are in denial. And you know what? You have to change that. You have to realize if there's an issue, we have to fix it.
And you need to embrace the criticism, because if somebody comes into your chat and they're rude, blow them out. Don't waste your time. But when somebody's trying to help, at least stop and think about it.
Yeah, we're out of time, Mike.
Can't be. We just got started.
I know. Been an hour.
I've got 16 more things to talk about.
It's over. What else?
Right.
Go ahead. You go down them really quick.
No, I'm teasing. I don't really have that many. I kind of jotted down some things here that I was talking about, and I think we've covered most of them. The one thing that I guess that kind of troubles me is lately I don't see a lot of attention by the equipment manufacturers being given to internet broadcasters and podcasters. It's almost like we're on a new chapter where, well, let's face it, this is a niche thing. Being in the internet broadcasting, being in the podcasting community, it's a very, very, very small industry. The numbers are not big enough to excite really anybody. But nevertheless, there's some good equipment out there, and there's some good vendors out there. And you do your homework, and you can do really well if you'll spend some time on it. And there are people out there to help you. If you're not a member of the IAIB, you're missing the point and missing the boat completely, because the IAIB forum is a great place to go and get help, where we can talk about equipment. If there's a particular equipment manufacturer who's not supporting their equipment, we're going to tell you about it. If there's one that's particularly good, we talk about that as well. I'm go ahead and tell you right now, I admit it publicly, there is a problem with some ATR 2100s. It is a very inexpensive piece of equipment. The USB jack on it is mounted to a circuit board. It is surface mounted on that circuit board, as accordingly it's not really robust. If you heavy hand that connection plugging into the USB connector on the microphone, you could damage the microphone. Some of them come from China, where the USB ports don't work well. For $35, you're not going to get a $1,000 Neumann microphone like Andrew has. So what? Big deal. That doesn't mean that it's not a good product. It just means that you have to be careful to make sure you get a good one. But the bottom line is, these kinds of things we talk about, the insides, the story, the nuances, that information is available because we talk about it a lot on the IAIB. We also have a Facebook page, internet broadcasting page on Facebook, that we get into some really good discussions there, audio and video internet broadcasting as well as podcasting.
No, and the forum is a great place to go. If you are not a member of the forum, you could go to ibroadcastnetwork.org and then click on the forum button there, and you could join the forum. The great group of people there, and there are experts from every aspect of broadcasting. There are video guys in there. There's audio guys in there. There's industry providers in there that provide live streams for people. So if you have a question, that's the place to go, is iBroadcastNetwork.com. You can go to the forum on the IAIB. Mike, I want to thank you for coming on. It's always great to have you on, and I want to do this more with you. Every month or so, I want to have you on, and we could talk about, just the same stuff, because it's interesting.
Absolutely. Definitely need to be at the IAIB. It's iBroadcastNetwork.org.
You could also follow Mike on Twitter, MC Phillips on Twitter. You're on Google Hangouts. You're on Google Plus. You're everywhere that social media is available. So
that's not necessarily good, is it?
I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but we should talk about next time when you're on. Maybe we should talk about ways that you can market your show, because you remember what it was like in radio. The internet's a little different. How do you market a show on the internet?
It is so different. It is so different.
So we could talk about that next time. But again, I appreciate everybody tuning in for this. If you are watching live, we're live every Monday. Wow, what day am I doing this? Every Friday at 1 p.m. East at gfqlive.tv. If you're downloading the podcast, I encourage you guys to join. We have a great chat room there. Also, subscribe to us. We're on iTunes. We're on Windows Phone. We're everywhere podcasts are available. And we'll see you all next time on the IAIB Spotlight. Good night, everybody.